Good morning. Good morning to the Special Representative of the Secretary General and Head of UNSOM in Somalia. Good morning to the representative from ATMIS, to the Minister of Information, to our Deputy Minister who has also joined us, other members of the Federal Government of Somalia, ambassadors, members of UPeace, the faculty, the students and the alumni. Welcome to this special International Day of Peace, and we will acknowledge the accession that was signed between UPeace and Somalia at the UN General Assembly last year. In 1951, the then members of the United Nations contributed coins and medals to enable the striking of what has become known as the peace bell. And this bell is sounded every year on the 21st of September, acknowledging the International Day of Peace. We would like to begin the proceedings today, and I would like to invite Dr. Mohammed Youssef, who is the UPeace Somali Country Director, to address our meeting.
Excellencies, distinguished guests from the international community, members of the Federal Government of Somalia, alumni of University for Peace, I would like to welcome you to join the University for Peace on this important day of the International Day of Peace. Throughout the history of human being, peace has always been elusive. But again, today we are here to commemorating the feeling of peace and the hope of peace. The United Nations General Assembly assigned this particular day on the 21st of September to commemorate the peace throughout the world, and this was established since 1981. And every year, on this particular day, we send the message globally to maintain and feel the importance of peace. Coincidentally, a year before the establishment of this day, it was also established the University for Peace at the General Assembly. So at the same period, in the 80s, early 80s, there have been these two important establishments, the Peace Day, World Peace Day, and the University for Peace. From there, I would like to emphasize that the importance that the University for Peace puts in every effort to get across the message of world peace. The University for Peace has its affiliations throughout the different continents of the world, in Asia, in Europe, and the big program of Africa Regional Program. And recently, in 2018, a Somalia program was founded in Mogadishu campus. Mogadishu campus, since then, produced more than 300 graduates with a Doctor of Philosophy degree and a Master of Arts degree. And this is part of the global alumni of the University for Peace, which is, at the moment, is over 2,000. So in this short period of the last 4 or 5 years, 300 in Somalia and 2,000 over the world, you can see the importance of the figure that shows Somalia's commitment of promoting the peace. Now, the University for Peace is committed to get the peace message across the world. UPeace, which is the name known for the University for Peace, it seems that it's not shown in some parts of the institutions, but I would like to encourage the institutions to know about more and more about UPeace and its initiatives. UPeace Somalia, since its establishment in 2018, introduced programs in peace, governance, and development, programs related to the environment, development, and peace, programs related to promoting the human rights, international law and human rights, and a Master in Arts program in disaster resilience leadership. And this is where it comes, University for Peace which is committed to promote the global leaders. I would like to announce that this year, the Somalia program and the Africa Regional Program introduced more programs in the sector of Doctor of Philosophy and the Master of Arts. UP Somalia introduced 3 more programs in the Doctor of Philosophy, which all are working towards the peace. Doctor of Philosophy in Blue Economy and Maritime Security is one of the new programs. Doctor of Philosophy in Leadership and Sustainable Development, and Doctor of Philosophy in Land Degradation. These are in addition to the previous and traditional PhD program, Peace, Development, and Governance. In addition to these Doctor of Philosophy programs, UP's Somalia program also introduced 4 Master of Arts programs: Peace, Governance, and Development, Environment, Development and Peace, International Law and Human Rights, and Master of Arts in Disaster Resilience Leadership. I would like also to announce more Master of Arts programs, which are Energy, Master in Energy, Master of Arts in Sustainable Water Resources Management and Climate Change Adaptation. So these new programs and the previous ones are hoped to meet the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. As you are aware, we are already in midterms of this SDG, which was established and agreed back in 2015. And we are already halfway through to get to 2030. And it's through the education that we can make sure that we have a substantial data to back up these goals. So University for Peace is committed to do through research programs at the level of Doctor of Philosophy and Masters. And lastly but not least, media and peace. Media, we all know that, plays a substantial role to get across important messages. UP Somalia program is also working on developing at the master's level in peace and media. I will welcome Mr. Steve Turner to give us some insight about media and peace program. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Youssef. And as you have just mentioned, essential to peace building and peacekeeping is the ability to communicate, to connect with communities, even attitudinal changes. And in keeping with the philosophy of UPeace, to actually address real, tangible subjects that will be of benefit and that will improve the ability of the students and the alumni as they move into professions. So it is important for UPeace to keep up with the needs, and through the Mogadishu campus to keep up with the needs in Somalia, which is why we're developing for the next academic year a Master of Arts in Media and Peace. And I'm delighted that the Minister of Information is able to join us today. And I'm anticipating sidebar discussions with him and in the future as we develop these media courses. The Master of Arts will be developed with specialists. So we will be inviting professional practitioners to each contribute and develop a series of modules that will build up towards this master's degree. And we also anticipate using the collaboration that UPeace has already established with the Al Jazeera Media Institute to deliver these specialized modules through the Al Jazeera Media Institute e-learning platform. And these will then be combined with core modules from UPeace and develop into the Master of Arts. Approaching in this way will also allow us to offer these individual modules as certificate programs. And this is an important part of what the Mogadishu campus has to offer, being accessible for working professionals as well as for students, where they can gain an accredited certificate from the established University for Peace. One other information to also illustrate this engagement is that UPeace has recently taken on the co-chairmanship of the Somali Media Support Group. So from the last meeting onward, the co-chairs of the Somali Media Support Group, which is a coordinating body working with all of the stakeholders in media development in Somalia, the co-chairs will be UPeace and UNESCO. And also very happy to see the representative of UNESCO Somalia, Dr. Mark Wall, who has been able to join our meeting this morning. So these are the approaches in line with the general philosophy of keeping UPeace practical and tangible and realistic, as well as producing rigorous academic studies and qualifications. So to hand over to my colleague, I would like to invite Dr. Osman to address the meeting. Dr. Osman is the sub-regional representative of Africa and the Middle East and is a dynamic man behind many of the collaborations that we have achieved in the last years.
Thank you so much, Steve Turner, for the wonderful introduction. Good morning. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Distinguished representatives from the Federal Republic of Somalia, esteemed representatives from the United Nations, faculty, students from the United Nations University for Peace, honorable ambassadors, and my fellow Somali citizens. Thank you for gathering here on this important day, the International Day of Peace. And I want to say again, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, which is a greeting that signifies peace and calls for peace. There are many wise words we can get from different cultures. From the Somali culture, nabadda nas le nugale, symbolizes peace as a mother that breastfeeds her child. To the great wise words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who said, "True peace is not merely the absence of war or tension, it is the absence of justice." These words from Somalia to the far corner of the Atlantic Ocean, to a brief conversation I had with the ambassador from the People's Republic of China, who gave me another peace quote. These words hold immense weight as we come together today against a background filled with numerous challenges: climate change, social injustice, inequality, and ongoing conflicts that undermine our collective pursuit for sustainable development and peace. This month alone, September 2023, has been a month of striking contrasts, both revealing the stark realities we face and laying ground foundation for collective action. This month of September opened with optimism. In Africa, we had in Nairobi for the first time the Africa Climate Week. We had the Africa Climate Youth Assembly and the Africa Climate Summit hosted by the President of the Republic of Kenya, President William Ruto. These gatherings were elevated by the presence of global leaders like the UN Secretary General and various committed change makers from all around the world. However, in this month alone, this sense of hope was sharply affected by various disasters devastated the lives of many people, such as the earthquake in Morocco and the tragic dam collapse in Libya, and many, many conflicts that are happening all over the world. Some of them continuing for the second to third year in Russia and Ukraine, and some of them are new in Azerbaijan and Armenia. These remind us the urgent challenges we must confront. These disasters and calamities compel us to ask ourselves, are we ready for a world with extreme weather and chronic conflicts will be the new normal? The answer extends both immediate disaster response, immediate conflict resolution, immediate diplomatic missions. It urges us to establish resilient systems for an uncertain future. Amidst that background, this month also signifies the 78th United Nations General Assembly, which is convening right now as we speak in New York, which also emphasized the incremental steps that are insufficient to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. Adding to the essence and sense of urgency, world leaders yesterday, on the 18th of September, adopted a political declaration to accelerate action on Sustainable Development Goals. This momentous decision indicates commitment to welfare of not just the present, but the future generations. As Mr. Guterres stated at the opening of the high-level forum at the United Nations headquarters, the SDGs are not just a list of goals. They carry the hopes, the dreams, the rights, and the expectations of people everywhere. These words amplify the fact that our pursuit of these goals is not merely a bureaucratic endeavor, but also a moral imperative. This month, September, therefore, serves as a watershed moment uniting us in a common mission to tackle climate change, social inequality, and other global challenges. It also calls to arm for a global solidarity, making it abundantly clear that the time for decisive collective action is now. But there is one thing I haven't said about this September, and September, the month of September. Today, as we celebrate 21st of September, the International Day of Peace, tomorrow, 22nd September of September, is my birthday as well. So, so September means a lot for me. So I wish they could push a day, the International Peace Day, to the 22nd. But anyway, it's still fine. So let me come to the UPeace. UPeace sits at this junction that the United Nations is a global institution that brings together different instruments for diplomacy, practice, policy, and education. We represent the critical aspect that would serve everything else. To come up with the right policies, you need the right educated people. You need the right people who can collect the research and data. The University for Peace, over the past 4 decades, we will be soon celebrating our 42nd, I think, anniversary, or our 43rd, from governance to climate change adaptation to institution building, as my colleagues mentioned, we facilitate worldwide education, worldwide dialogue, thereby contributing to policies and practices aimed at achieving sustainable development goals, nurturing peace, and addressing concerns of our world. As we mark the International Day of Peace this year, the theme of action for peace, our ambition for global goals, resonates profoundly. Peace and sustainable development are inseparable. One cannot exist without the other. And therefore, it is necessary and incumbent upon us to make every effort to realize the sustainable development goals, from eradicating poverty to mitigating climate change. We are at a turning point, as my colleague said, halfway to the 2030. Various reports indicate that we are falling behind. Yet, they also remind us that it is not too late for action. As the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said, the SDGs are not a list of goals. They are the hopes, the dreams, and rights and expectations of people everywhere. So it's never too late to work on that. And I'm really grateful that we are represented in this gathering today, people who worked very hard in the Somali higher education and primary education, who have made and enabled the Somali people during the decades of the conflict to create those hopes, those dreams, and enable them to live the expectations and the dreams they have, including myself, who I have actually, my former president of my university, Mogadishu University, Dr. Ali Sheikh Ahmed, and to whom I owe him so much. On the other side, I have also the president of the Union of Somali Universities, Dr. Mohammed, who is who is not only the president of the Union of Somali Universities, but the director of Banad University, one of the first medical universities that produced hundreds of medical doctors, of whom actually served as cabinet, as members of the parliament, but also in the far remote areas, in the clinics and the primary healthcare units across Somalia. So sustainable development goals are achieved and are rallied all over the world, not by the United Nations, but also the individual citizens of every country. And I cannot exhaust the list. I want to emphasize, as a citizen of Somalia, but also as part of the United Nations University faculty, one of our core issues is the issue of climate action. It's a major, and we know COP28 draws closer. It serves an opportunity and a unique time to not only reaffirm our commitment to the Paris Climate Agreement, but also to elevate our aspirations. To borrow from the Nelson Mandela, it always seems impossible until it is done. Climate change is real. It's real here in Somalia, it's real everywhere. There are people who are dying for lack of water and people who are being destroyed by drought and other calamities. In conclusion, let's proceed with conviction, courage, and unity as we stand at the midpoint of our timeline for achieving sustainable development goals. We would like to recognize the support of Qatar Charity, which have been a very good partner for the United Nations University for Peace, for supporting our new presidential doctoral scholarship scheme, which is the first of its kind, which is meant for the higher education in Somalia to be equipped with relevant doctoral level faculty to be serving and leading the institutions, but also to create link between the higher education and the state so that there is ownership among the Somali society. We want to thank and recognize for their contribution. Let's today not just commemorate, but also a pledge to make every day a day of peace, and a pledge to turn the seemingly impossible into possible. Thank you, and may peace be upon all of us. Thank you. I will welcome Professor Samuel Kale Uwesi, who is the Director of the United Nations University for Peace Africa Regional Program, but also covers Middle East, to give us his statement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Mohamed Osman. Thank you very much, Program Director. Thank you very much, my colleague here in Somalia, Dr. Mohamed Yusuf. The SRSG and head of UNSOM, the representative of ATMIS, the Chinese ambassador here present, representative of the Italian embassy, the ministers here present, especially the Minister of Information and the Minister of Women, other members of the international community, the diplomatic corps, faculty of University for Peace and other faculties in universities here in Somalia, my colleagues, friends, and citizens of Somalia. I am proudly an adopted son of Somalia. Why do I say that? Today signifies a lot of things. Our first graduation of UPs took place on the 21st of September in 2021. Sometimes when I travel around the continent and I talk about the United Nations University for Peace, the first question they ask me is that, does the United Nations have a university? And I always respond, I say, yes, the United Nations has 2 universities. And one is United Nations University based in Japan, which of course is not a real university. It's a kind of think tank for the United Nations. And you have the United Nations University for Peace, which is a graduate-only university, which provides master's and doctoral qualifications on issues related to peace and conflict. It is critically important to understand that the United Nations University for Peace, which is usually called UPeace, has 2 hats. It's a graduate university and it's also an intergovernmental organization. And that is why the United Nations General Assembly created it as a treaty organization. And it was created with the following mission: to provide humanity with an international institution of higher education for peace with the aim of promoting among all human beings the spirit of understanding, tolerance, and peaceful coexistence, to stimulate cooperation among peoples and to help lessen obstacles and threats to world peace and progress in keeping with the noble aspirations proclaimed in the Charter of the United Nations. Therefore, the UPeace is an institution that is mandated by the United Nations to use education as a weapon to bring about peace. Therefore, it was Kofi Annan, the former UN Secretary General, who said, "Education is peace building by another name." We all know that a lot of money is being invested in preparation for war, but very little is invested in preparation for peace. Why? As an academic, we understand that a lot of times war is profitable to some people, and most times very powerful people. Therefore, the United Nations University plays that role of education, which is long-term investment in peace. And that is why someone said, if education is expensive, try illiteracy. Because illiteracy is more expensive than education because it leads to conflict and violence and the loss of lives. Consequently, the university takes a global outlook, considering that it's an academic arm of the United Nations. It has its biggest program, which is the Africa program, and the Africa program, which was actually created in 2002. And there was a strange thing that happened when the Africa program was created. It was created in Geneva. And the last time I checked, Geneva was not in Africa. 3 years down the line, it was moved to Africa's diplomatic capital, Addis Ababa. That's in 2005. And its mission is to strengthen the capacity of African regional institutions, including educational institutions, and to build expertise for the better understanding of peace and conflict in Africa. And therefore, UPeace Africa has undertaken a collaborative approach. And that is why today you find the other universities in Somalia. Consequently, in Africa, we have MOUs with about 40 other institutions. Now, what brings us to Somalia? A few years ago, a young man who was at that time called Mohammed Osman, and that's why I'm proud. Whenever he speaks, I smile, because I remember how it all started. Walked to my office in Addis Ababa and said, it will be important for UPs to come to Somalia. And, you know, and that is where all of us have to do a better job, in the sense that the message out there about Somalia is not the real message. Once you mention Somalia, everybody thinks about the challenges that Somalia faces. And when he walked to me and said we should move to Somalia, I looked at this young man and with a lot of surprise. How can you say we should move to Somalia? So he explained, he said, maybe you should visit Somalia and then make up your mind. I said, well, I don't have a budget to go to Somalia. He said, I will pay your flight. So at that time, Ethiopian Airlines was not flying to Somalia, so we flew to Kenya and took another flight to Mogadishu. It was my first experience in Mogadishu. We spent a couple of days, and eventually I went back to Addis and contacted my principals in Costa Rica, director. I said, I think it is important that we move to Somalia. We establish a program in Somalia. He said, give me a few minutes. I'm sure he went to Google and typed Somalia. All he saw were bombs exploding all over the place. And he called back, he said, Sam, are you crazy? You mean the Somalia that we know? I said, yes, Somalia. He said, is that not the Afghanistan of Africa? I said, I am not sure about that, but I've been to Somalia, and I realized there are people living there, living normal lives, going to school, people going to work, and therefore it is not what the media actually portrays out there. He said, okay, I am not going to say no, but you are on your own. You are in charge of the Africa program. Do what you think is right. And I said, if UPeace has to be anywhere in Africa, then it has to be in Somalia. And consequently, the effort made by Mohammed Osman paid off. But one of the first questions I asked him is that, I called him doctor at that point, and he said, disclaimer, I'm not a doctor. I said, why are you not a doctor? You sound so intelligent. You need to have this doctorate degree. And I think he wasn't too sure whether he actually wanted to start a doctorate degree at that time. I decided to enroll him, and I paid his application fees. And I said, fly to Addis and start the doctoral program. Today, that is the person who just spoke before me. He is Dr. Mohammed Osman. He's a member of Somalia's National Economic Council. He's driving a lot of processes in the continent and in the Middle East. And I was in my native country, Cameroon, and I saw him marching with President Ruto and Dr. Akiyemi, the president of the African Development Bank, and I was just overwhelmed with how far we've come. So in 2001, we had our first graduation of about 144 master's degree holders. With that, we realized we were on the right path in Somalia. We have faced a lot of challenges as usual, considering the history of the country. I always joke with Dr. Mohammed Yusuf. I said, you know, a student will call you in Somalia at midnight and he says, I am Mohammed. And I said, which one? I said, because I know more than 50 Mohammeds. The open door policy, the approach we have is that students have access to their professors at all times. And that is why a student will call the Africa Program Director in Addis Ababa to discuss issues that have to do with their personal academic things. And I would say, call Dr. Yusuf in Mogadishu. He'll deal with that issue. But then, those are some of the things we have been facing. Last year, on the 2nd of December, we graduated 18 doctoral holders, including the President of the Federal Republic of Somalia. And in the course of that graduation, the rector named the UP's campus in Mogadishu after His Excellency, Dr. Hassan Sheikh Mohamud. And in response, he set up a fund to provide doctoral studies in a bid to strengthen higher education in Somalia. So the scholarship is supposed to be 100 scholarship for people in the higher education institutions to ensure that we improve the quality of higher education in Somalia. That is the path we have taken. And today, to be celebrating International Peace Day in Somalia is a confirmation that the path UPeace is taking is the right path. And as a result, I bring you warm greetings from the rector of UPeace, Dr. Francisco Rojas Aravena, and the entire UPeace community to the people of Somalia. And as we work for peace, our hope has always been for peace, because peace is what we want. As Kofi Annan says, we all want peace. Thank you very much.
Great.
Give me 2 microphones to hold, right?
Yeah. So thank you very much, Drs. Youssef, Drs. Osman, and Professor Samuel Owesi. We will conclude this section on UPeace after these interesting points of information and insights, almost, shall we say, anecdotes, with a short presentation that wraps up this section on the university.
In the context of Somalia, President former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan, who said, education is peace by another name.
skies of more peaceful worlds.
So I would very much like to welcome the Special Representative of the Secretary General, the head of the UN in Somalia, Ms. Catriona Lang. The duty seems to be to hold two microphones, if you can manage that.
I will try.
Okay.
First challenge of the day, holding two microphones. Good morning, everybody. Representatives from the fabulous University of Peace, Minister, my fellow ambassadors, excellencies, everyone. It is such a pleasure to be here today. Kofi Annan's had quite a lot of billing, but it's my job to make sure Antonio Guterres gets heard as well. And I want to start with a quote from him. Peace is not automatic. Peace is the result of action. And we're all here to play our part in this fabulous country, Somalia, which I first came to actually 30 years ago in the original UN mission. So I can definitely be somebody who's testament to the amazing progress Somalia has made. As we know, UNGA is underway, the UN General Assembly. It is a sobering moment. We are off track, and there are some good reasons for that. We've had COVID, we've got Ukraine, but frankly, we're not doing enough. And that point about Antonio Guterres, we actually need to step up and start acting. As we've all heard, there is no development without peace, there's no peace without development. The UN, if you didn't have it, you'd have to invent it. There are people say, is the UN still relevant today? I think the Secretary General was asked that in a recent interview. For me, as somebody quite new coming back to the UN after 30 years, who believes passionately in the UN and what it does, and I think what we do is maybe not always noticed in New York. It's down to what we're doing on the ground in these kind of missions, the one we have here in Somalia. I head UNSOM, which is a political mission, but it works side by side with the Africa Union peacekeeping mission. You're all very familiar with ATMIS. And I always wear, I've got my little joint badge, we are basically the UN and AU one team here in Somalia. I need a third flag with the Somali flag with me. So it's basically a trilateral effort. I'm not sure if anyone's here from ATMIS today. I think my friend and colleague Suef, who heads ATMIS, is away at the moment on a very well-deserved holiday. But it is on the ground, and then for us, of course, we can't do our job, what's called my good officer's role, representing the Secretary General to offer anything I can do to help bring about peace. And it starts at the grassroots. And one thing I really want to emphasize is the importance of women in peace building. They need a more prominent voice. There's no peace if women's voice isn't heard at the grassroots. And the final thing I want to say is this university. I didn't, frankly, know much about it, and I'm just blown away. I had to look in the brochures, the amazing courses that are offered. I wish I was a student again. I'd be signing up for one of them. But one idea I had, just as I was looking through the brochure, which I'd like to offer is, I think we're all part of the United Nations. Let's try and collaborate here in Somalia. I'd be very happy, for example, if people would like to give a guest lecture. I'd be really interested in tapping into the knowledge and expertise of your students to help us in our mission in Somalia. So let's maybe take that as our action that I will commit to from today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and we welcome that positive invitation. We will follow up with that. Thank you. Next, I would like to invite the representative of the African Union Transition Mission in Somalia, Mr. Mika Nkube. Two microphones.
Two microphones.
Yeah, double the voice.
Definitely. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Program Director. Assalamu alaikum. Good morning. I think it is still good morning. Your Excellency, Ms. Catriona Lang, the SRSG, Your Excellency Daoud Awais, the Minister of Information, Your Excellencies, members from the Cabinet of the Federal Government of Somalia, Your Excellencies, ambassadors from different nations accredited to Somalia, the UP's Somalia Country Director and the distinguished members from the University of Peace, all invited distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Ambassador Elamin Swaif, the Special Representative of the African Union Commission and the head of ATMIS, it is our pleasure to participate in the observance of the International Day of Peace organized by the University of Peace in Somalia. ATMIS, as you are aware, is a brainchild of the mantra African solutions to African problems. ATMIS remains a strong partner to Somalia to achieve Somalia's peace-building and state-building initiatives. These initiatives are needed today more than ever, and all are achievable with everyone's commitment. African Union mission has stood steadfast from 2007 until now, and will continue with everyone's support. And we want to assure all that all your efforts are appreciated and are never in vain. UP's efforts of fostering peace and stability since 1980 through enhancing intellectual capacity through leadership programs and that build decision-making capacities within Somalia and Africa cannot be overemphasized. Your programs are coming at the right time to achieve the much required peace and synergy with the SDGs. I want to say at this time, I hope in future to be one of your students, inshallah. Finally, on behalf of ATMIS, we appreciate UP's initiative to invite us to commemorate the International Peace Day at the Kale Hotel and continue to pledge ATMIS support to achieve peace in Somalia, peace and stability in Somalia. Thank you and a happy International Peace Day to Somalia and the whole world.
Thank you very much. Next, I would like to invite the director of the Association of Somali Universities, recognizing this is an academic meeting, albeit that it is a global topic that we are talking about. So, Dr. Mohammed.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, the fellow advocate of this event of peace. I would like to greet you, the Islamic greeting, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace upon you. Let me start my remarks with the Somali wisdom. Nabadda yaano. That means peace and milky. In fact, the Somali linked the peace with prosperity and contrast of the war. That is associated with the drafty and poverty, only war, meaning the war and drafty. In 1945, the UNESCO put this powerful statement, since the wars began in the minds of the mean human being, and it's the mind of the mean, that the defense of the peace must be to constructed through the education. The proper education is the key for the peace and better life. In my understanding, the UN Peace is an educational institution specialized in consolidating the peace. On this significant day, the International Peace Day, we are gathering here to reflect upon the significance of peace in our global village. We came together today to commemorate and to reaffirm our commitment in the building the harmonious and peaceful global community. Peace is not merely the absence of war. It is the absence of harm, as it is an state of unity, compassion, shared understanding, and it's about fostering the world where the individuals can live free from fear, violence, poverty, illiteracy, prejudice, and discrimination. Peace is the foundation upon which we can build the prosperous and sustainable future for the generations to come. In the world, often marred by discomfort and the division, and it is crucial to remember the peace that begins within ourselves. It recognizes the inherent worth and dignity of every human being, regardless of their race, religion, nationality, cultural background, and social status. We must embrace our diversity and celebrate our differences, because it is through the dialogue and mutual respect that we can bridge the divides and the forge of lasting peace. The best to be, it requires to address the root of cause of violence. We should strive to eradicate the poverty, inequality, injustice, and oppression. We must promote education, empower the women and marginalize it, and ensure access to the basic human right and opportunity for all. By tackling this understanding, underlying the issue, we can create an environment where the peace and prosperity can prevail and flourish. Additionally, the power of forgiveness and reconciliation and healing the victims of war from trauma and grievances are a key to promote the peace and stability. History has shown that the human being have potential to develop the sense of strength, forgiveness, healing, and recovery, and other relevant skills on the face of unimaginable suffering and pain. Through the forgiveness, we break the cycle of violence and lay groundwork. As we commemorate this International Peace Day, let us not forget the countless individuals who have dedicated their lives to pursuit of the peace, from activists and peacemakers and humanitarian and volunteers. Their tireless effort inspire us to believe in the transformation, the power of compassion and love. In conclusion, let us recommit ourselves to the noble cause of peace. As the Somali proverb goes, nabadda, the intended meaning, the peace is a lifeline. Each one of us has a role to play in creating the world where the conflict are resolved and peacefully, where the justice prevails, and where the rights of dignity of every person. Together, let us build the bridge and down barriers and snow the seeds of peace for the future generation. Thank you, and my peace with you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Mohammed. I'm trying not to drop the microphones. There's 4 of them here. I think it would make a very loud noise. We're very honored to welcome from the Embassy of the People's Republic of China, Ambassador Fei Shengqiao, who has an address for the meeting. One, and it will reveal the video. Press again, and it will start the video. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
索马里的马哈姆的小朋友，你看到飞上天空的和平鸽了吗？我真的很感动，因为这是6岁孩子最淳朴的愿望。和平犹如阳光
Thank you. My name is Fei, the Chinese ambassador to Somalia. I'm delighted to have this opportunity to join all the distinguished audience here, including Her Excellency Katrina Lang, the SISG, and also my dear friend, the Honorable Minister Awis, as well as all the leadership of the UPs here, as well as the noon line of the university. It's a very special occasion, I would say, because it's marking the International Day of Peace. As you have just watched the short clip video, it showcases actually an event that took place just a week ago. As some of you may be aware that a year ago, that also at Dikali, we held that dialogue between the Chinese taikonauts in China's space station 400 kilometers above us and African teenagers. At the time, just a year ago, the Somali boys and girls performed wonderfully well. They showed to the world and their compatriots on the African continent that they were among the best. This year, we had an opportunity to follow up on that event. That is what happened last week. Last week, we actually held an award ceremony for an Africa-wide painting competition. Tens of hundreds of African boys and girls have submitted their entry paintings for the competition. The title is My Dream. Everybody may have his or her dream. So do African boys and girls. And out of these more than 1,000 pictures, 10 pictures won the top awards. And one of them was from Somalia. And just now in the video, you saw the picture. It's a dove for peace. That's why I would like to bring it here today. And also, I think that it was a good surprise to me too, because I got to know later that the top 10 paintings from Africa were launched by a rocket into space, and they were exhibited in China's space station, as you watched just now, for the very first time for humanity. And it's a message for peace. The Chinese taikonaut, Mr. Zhu Yangzhu, as you saw just now, he's actually, I just happen to know, he's actually a father of a 6-year-old child himself. While that painting, Dove for Peace, was painted by a 6-year-old Somali boy, Kokib. So I think that is really very much relevant for today's message. We heard messages of peace from all the distinguished guests and the hosts, which I very much appreciate and I very much agree with. And so we can see peace is an aspiration shared not only by people on Earth, but also by taikonauts and astronauts from all other nations, even in space. That is important. And I very much agree with one saying that he quoted, which was originally said by the Chinese President Xi Jinping, that peace is just like the sunshine and the air that we enjoy, which is hardly noticed when we have it, but it would be dearly missed when we lose it. And it's something that we cannot live without. And I also recall a saying told to me by a Somali friend just last week. He said to me, okay, let's take a look at what is happening elsewhere in this world. Not only here on the African continent, but also in other continents as well. If people have really come to see what has gone through in this country of Somalia, people would not have gone into any conflict in the very first place. So I think this peace message is not only relevant for Somalia, but also is very much relevant for the whole African continent and for people in all other parts of the world. And that's why this has made our gathering today all the more important. So I would like to say, and I share with Her Excellency Katrina Lane, that I would say that China has always been supportive of the UN efforts for peace and the Somali efforts for peaceful reconstruction.